Hello and welcome to this skating lesson. I'm Dave Leese and I'm thrilled to welcome Kori Ade. Kori, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much for having me, Dave.
Yes, well, been your first time on This and That. Let's start with some news of the week. I'm sure this was interesting to you. We found out that Jeremy Abbott is going to be making a comeback next season. He's 2 spots, 3 spots. I'm sure this is very interesting to you. You've been down this road before. Were you surprised he's making a comeback?
Not really surprised. I'm not sure if Jeremy Abbott or Plushenko will both follow through with what they promised, but I'm hoping they both do. Yeah. You know, I don't think there's anything wrong with veterans in the sport, so come on back and show us what you've got. Absolutely.
Yeah. I saw some of those triple axel videos, and I was like, I'm expecting this by the day. We also found out Patrick Chan will be working with Marina Zueva and her team, and that Tatiana Voloshajar is pregnant. So lots are going on. But lots going on with you and your students. So take us up to speed, because we've seen Jason's been in LA some part of this summer. He's landing quads. I guess, get caught up to speed on what's going on in, Kori Ade world.
Sure, absolutely. So Jason has spent some time at the Toyota Center with Frank, and I think that's fabulous. True to, my coaching philosophy. I feel like that's an important part of every skater's growth and development. Obviously, Jason and I are going on our 17th year together. And, if I wasn't willing to let him branch out and figure out what he needs and also guide him to that, I think that I wouldn't be doing my best job for him. So that's been fantastic. Trust Frank completely. He's got obviously lots and lots of experience, and I just feel like he's a true classy professional.
So I guess, what do you want him to gain from there? Talk through the decision process.
I think really whenever an athlete branches out to find a different training environment, sometimes it's based on the need that I will see for their growth. Sometimes it's just building a little bit of independence. In Jason's case, I think he really just needed to get out and get into a sort of serene and protected training environment. And I say that in the nicest way possible. Jason and Gracie are really good friends. And I think that the Toyota Center has been very good at helping their high-level elite athletes sort of maintain focus. And I think that that's one thing that Jason just needed to experience. So that, along with Frank's expertise, and then Benoit, who's the trainer there, has done fantastic things with Jason physically to just keep him moving in the right direction, on his healing process.
Well, let's talk about quads, because I heard that there were 2 of them going on at Champs Camp. I was getting reports, quad toe and quad sow. So we saw quad toe in practice from Jason in Salt Lake. So I guess, how long has he been landing them? What is the development process like?
I mean, I think that's a tough question. How long has he been landing them? Because he landed them last season. So I don't know that it's I can tell you that it's been over a year, but I could also say the quad is, one of my male athletes likes to say that the quad is like a high maintenance girlfriend. So a lot of finessing. So anyway, that's what in fact, he's named his quad Madison.
Oh.
Not Jason, but the other athlete here. So, this is how we refer to quads around here. And I can just say that, it's a day-to-day thing. It's a day-to-day relationship that athletes have with quads. I think it's about energy level. I think it's about anxiety level. I think it's about need. How much do I need to land this right now? And then it's also about maintenance and preventative, training. So anyway, Jason is landing toe and he is landing sow. I can confirm both of those statements. And I can tell you that they're in for, actually the toe is in right now and the sow is to be integrated.
Okay. So I think it's interesting. He did 2 events back to back. You flew, then came back. He has Skate America, and then he has a bit of a lull until Japan. So what is the Kori Ade mastermind plan with this? Yeah.
Strategy.
Yeah. Strategy. Yes.
Yeah. And through discussions with some of the people in the high performance department at US Figure Skating, we sort of came to the conclusion that would be a good plan, just because we'd have more time between the end of the Senior B and the beginning of the Grand Prix season. But also, if you think about from a strategic standpoint, the fact that there's a team event at the Olympics, this mimicked a little bit more what the team to individual events would be like at the Pyeongchang Olympics, should Jason be able to make that team. So I felt like, when else would he have an opportunity to do back-to-back events that would sort of mimic a team to individual event?
Interesting. Well, you also have Jordan Moeller, who I saw videos of him back on the ice. So I guess, is he competing at regionals? What is his status?
He is competing at regionals, and 9 months to the day that he broke his leg, he looked at me and he said, "I'm ready to rotate quads. My triple feels amazing. I'm ready to go." And he did. So it not 100% yet, but really solid, beautiful quad toes that I know he'll be able to, bring back into.
How many kids at regionals do you have?
So we're kind of spread out among many regions, and I would have to say we're covering 5 regions this year, and we have about 8 kids. So we're all over the place. A lot of kids in developmental phases, which I'm excited about. So we're just looking forward to a year to 18 months of developing those athletes to being great juniors and seniors.
Interesting. Well, the competitions really have started to heat up. We saw Nebelhorn, a few of, the men you obviously are very familiar with. But let's start with the winner, Alexander Petrov from Russia, because he had a triple axel that, was a little bit jaw-dropping. And I was wondering, as a coach, do you have that same reaction when you see that? Just the kick.
It's interesting. I thought that his axel is beautiful. He's obviously attacking it. I, as a coach, am looking at it from a little bit of a different perspective, saying, I want this kid to have a better axis. I want him to be a little bit more, have a little better foundation for his air position. But, I think that it starts with the fundamentals of, is he taking off? Is he attacking? Is he rotating? And he's doing all of those things. So developmentally, he's a 17-year-old. He'll get there.
Yeah. Well, I guess, what did you think of Yorick Hendricks? Because he's a really interesting skater. He's very European. And he sent me a message today asking if his pants were too tight because one of the judges cited him for it during the free skate. So I wasn't paying attention to that, but apparently some of the judges were.
I didn't notice the pants. I think Yorick's a great skater. He's a great guy. He's just kind of one of those athletes, again, that we just love to have at events. He's got a good personality, fun to watch, and I'm not really worried about the tightness of pants.
Well, apparently they have to switch pants now because this is a problem. And you can check it on the protocol sheet, everyone. 1 of 10. It says there's a button apparently for pants. I didn't know this. But
let out a seam or two. I mean, we can just get it done with that, right?
So he's kind of my favorite artsy European skater. He had a really interesting Titanic program last year. He has something with a heartbeat going on this year, mid-program. What did you think of him and his performance here?
Some thrusting. I feel like he's kind of one to watch, right? Because he's aiming at components, and I think he's doing a good job of sort of packaging himself as, like you said, the artist. I think that he's been around for a while. He's got some competitive experience, and I feel like he absolutely is one of those athletes that rounds out a field of men, right? You just can't wait to watch him skate because he does bring some performance quality to the ice. So I love Yorick. I think he's great.
Me too. Well, 2 spots for the U.S. men at Worlds this year. How much do you have to look at Grant Hochstein? Because he's someone who went to Worlds last year.
Yeah.
He improved quite a bit from the last competition to this competition. What did you think of him here?
I think Grant is great. Grant is one of those athletes that he's got some competitive experience. I think that a couple things have happened for him. He's matured, so that's one of the things. He's had obviously some world exposure now, which is another thing. But in talking to Grant, I'm realizing that part of what I think is his formula at the moment is, he is less consumed with just being an ice skater. He is obviously engaged to be married, excited to talk about that when you ask him about, what's going on in his life. And also, he really doesn't, he doesn't apologize for the fact that he's on the ice coaching all day. So I think for some athletes, when you take away the all-consuming training concept and you kind of sprinkle their lives with other interesting things, whether it's school, relationships, whatever it is, I think maybe that takes some of the pressure off of just being a skater. And so identifying themselves through other things can sort of give them a breath of fresh air and make skating feel like it's fun again. So I think Grant is in that maybe flow right now.
Do you find that he looks more experienced when he skates now that he's been to Worlds? Is there a change that happens after that?
I don't know if the impetus for skating
Mm-hmm.
better is worlds. Who knows? I
Mm-hmm.
think you could look at an event in someone's life like that and say, isn't it coincidental that he comes back looking as good as he looks? But I think also when an athlete has been to the world or an Olympic level, they realize, once you're at the top, once you're already in that bottleneck, it's a very small population of people at the top that are as good as you are. So I think that gives some confidence. The athlete like Grant will feel like he's entitled to be there as opposed to still on that climb. So I like that about where he is with his skating right now. And I like Grant as a person. I like him as a skater, and I'm hoping for the best for him this season.
Well, what do you think of his music? He said he wanted to be more artistic than you this season. I got a text from Karen. I suggested, they took it. What does Kori Ade make of this? Yeah.
I love it for Grant. I think it's great. I think he's figuring it out.
Mm-hmm.
As we know during the Senior B events, a lot of things are in, and some things will come out before. Maybe even more things will come out before Worlds. But I think that he's in that sort of developmental phase with the music. And once an athlete, first of all, falls in love with their music and then falls in love with their choreography and then can integrate the two together, I think we see a little bit of morphing. And I think that Grant's in that early phase of developing artistically how this program is going to go. But I like it for him. So way to go, Dave. Good call.
Yeah. What did you make of Tim Dolensky here? I have a big soft spot for Tim. I think most of us first saw him when he threw up at the first U.S. Figure Skating Classic and the Kiss and Cry. He's been on my radar ever since. Clearly loves skating. What did you make of him here? He typically does skate better in the free skate than the short program, especially earlier in the season. I guess, what do you see from him?
So I see a lot of potential in Tim, and I always have. I think, if you're asking me to comment on an individual performance, that's hard for me with regard to these athletes that I know very well and watch the development of through the season. I think true to form, what Tim does best is, because he's a musician, I feel like first he embraces kind of what we were talking about with Grant. He embraces the artistic part, the components part. He builds the program, and then this is what I do with my athletes. So I love Tim and Debbie for what they do, but that's what they do. They build the program around the fact that Tim is an artist, and he's got to feel his music, and he's got to, embrace it. And I know that he switched programs after Champs Camp, so this is a new program for him as well. And I think that it's just in its infancy, and it will develop. I think it's going to be an awesome program come nationals.
I want to ask you about Champs Camp because, in gymnastics, all the gymnasts train at their home clubs, and then about once a month they train together. How much of an impact does having all of the top guys on the ice practicing their quads together have? Does it make them more competitive? And then when you come home, what kind of an impact?
I think there's definitely some energy that's created on the ice. I think it's a positive thing when you get a bunch of elite athletes together and they get to train together. And what they've done now is they've actually combined the men and women. So it is some women and some men on the ice at the same time. And that's interesting too, because it's not just a testosterone fest, or an estrogen fest. It's literally just elite athletes training together, supporting each other, clapping for each other. There's a lot of that culture that they're creating at Champs Camp, which I think is really positive. I wish that they would get together and be able to train more than just once a year, because sometimes it feels a little bit fabricated. If it were probably frequent, I think they would get into a groove with each other and it sort of feel like there was some more camaraderie.
Well, that's where I was leading you to. That's kind of my idea is I think when these people train together, you see results, for sure. It's funny, for so many years, the U.S. had so many top ladies, and it looks like we're getting quite a few men. So that's something to keep you up at night, but I'm feeling just okay.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. Remember, I'm a strategizer, so I'm just up at night strategizing for my athletes. But it's good. It's good. I think that concept of a training center is, an awesome one. I think the U.S. can move in that direction, and we just need to manage all the personalities that are involved.
Mm-hmm. Well, let's talk about
manage.
Yes. Let's talk about personalities. So on the ladies' side, Elizaveta Tuktamisheva had a really up and down season last year, coming off of the season when she was almost unbeatable when she won the World Championships. She won the short program here, didn't win the free skate. Where do you think she is in her career? It's a tough.
I think she's coming back from, being very public about the fact that she was a part of, unknowingly or knowingly, a part of, some of the substances that were being consumed. And I think that she was very public about that and very honest about that. And I think that that's why she had the unbeatable season that she had. Not that she isn't an amazing athlete. We've seen that since she was young with a triple axel at 13. So we know she's an incredible athlete. But to sustain that through puberty for a woman is difficult. And I think what she did when she had that killer season was just, plug along like unstoppable. Yeah. And there was a reason she was able to do that. So I think I'm so impressed that she's back. I'm so impressed that she's competing drug-free and that she is public about that. I think that's an awesome statement for her to make. And regardless of where she ranks this season, I am all for the fact that she's back and she is, here doing it the right way. So go, Elizaveta.
Well, it also sees like Nebelhorn from Japan. They have another one. You talked about the competition of the U.S. men, the Japanese ladies. There have been so much talk about the Russian ladies, but it seems like the Japanese ladies have just as much depth, if not more. Right. What did you make of her here? She was not someone I, was super on my radar, before this weekend.
She wasn't on my radar either. I thought she was great. I think she's solid. I could use a little bit more personality on the ice. That was a shimmy. I don't know if she has to shimmy to get it done, but just, I would like to see a little bit more of her, come out, because I'm not 100% sure that I know who she is as a person watching her perform. Yep. Nice programs, solid elements. I think that, again, she could mature into being a good skater, but I would love to see a little bit more artistry incorporated into what she's doing.
Mm-hmm. What did you think of Gabby Daleman? Because she's someone... I see her Instagram photos of her abs, so she's on my radar for that. And then she skated very well at Worlds. She's very aggressive, very athletic, which is, really nice to see. She's not someone that shies away during competition. What did you think of her?
Yeah, I think Gabby, again, she skated the way I would expect her to skate at this time of the year. And that's not to say that early competitions have expectations that are different, right? As an athlete, you still expect yourself to do as well as you can do. But I think that comes down to, what did she set her goals out to be at Oberstdorf, for example? If her goals were, I'm going to put a solid program out with the elements that I intend to do, and I know that I'm going to get some zeros, and I'm going to aim for some +2s by the end of the season, great. Then that job was done. She can check that off the list. It looked to me like that's kind of what she's doing is pacing herself for the season. She's a great athlete, right? She is not lacking in the athleticism department at all. I think that's awesome. She's going to do what she needs to do athletically. Now it's just a matter of bringing it all together, bringing the mental component, and then being able to stay on top during her Grand Prix season. So, yeah, I think she's got great potential, and I feel like it was a solid start to a season.
How do you pace the season? Because now that people are doing 2 Senior Bs, 2 Grand Prix, hopefully the final, hopefully nationals, 4 continents and worlds, and then a team event, how do you pace? When do you go from the 0 to the +1 to the +2? Like when do you want to start to see these pluses on the sheet?
I think every coach is different. If you know that there are elements that should be getting +2s and can get +2s without too much else being compromised, then you go for that +2 at the beginning of the season. I think there's something to be said for putting out some really high GOEs at the beginning of the season. It's really refreshing when a judge comes back after a roundtable and says, we gave a +1, but when we reviewed it, we realized it should have been a 3. And then that whole room of judges hears, hey, that's a 3. Don't be afraid to give the 3. So I think there is some benefit to putting out some really solid elements with high pluses early in the season. You're setting a standard. You're making a statement. You're saying this changed camel is a +3. You can't change that through the whole season. But on the other hand, if it's an element that is in a developmental phase, or it's just early, in its early inception into a program, maybe you accept a 0. Maybe you accept a -1. Hey, if you've got to put your hand down just to stay on one foot in your quad, put your hand down. It's going to be okay by the end of the season, by the time it's trained. So really, depending on when an athlete acquires a new element and when they want to integrate it, you have a different expectation through the season. I really try with my athletes not to have them learning new elements in a season. So whatever they've got, and then we build on the quality from there. So
if Jason got a -1 in a spin, would that be an issue the next day at the rink? Would you be...
Absolutely. He'd be spinning for 85 minutes straight.
All
No,
right.
it's interesting. The other thing is when you're pacing a program, just pacing the program, sometimes athletes forget that they're going to spin at their +3 potential in a competition, and they may take it easy in practice. That's more likely to happen in a spin than it is in a jump, right? You can't really go half into a triple, but you can go half into a spin. You can put half of your energy into a spin. Once you add adrenaline and the excitement of competition, sometimes they try a little bit harder than they've been trying in practice on the spins or the steps. So then you'll see pacing changes throughout the program. That's why everybody looks so tired at the end of their programs in September, because they just performed the way they want to perform in March, where they've been training the way they want to perform in September. Does that make sense?
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay.
No, I was just watching the ice dancers train, and Marie France would yell about those spins every time for a couple of the men who were not getting their legs up in their camel spin. You know, by the end of the day, I was ready to start yelling at them to get your leg up. Yes.
Yeah. We have a thing at our rink where they actually have to spend at least 20 minutes a day with their phone on the boards, self-teaching their spins.
Oh.
So they actually have to video themselves, because telling someone to get their leg up, if they're still spinning and they feel like it's good, they're still spinning.
Yeah.
It's a little different than telling them to check out. They're either on their butt or they're not, and they know the difference. So so we do a set your phone up on the wall and watch yourself spin, session. So it's good. Yeah.
Okay. Well, speaking of spinning, in the air, Alyona Savchenko is kind of setting a new standard with her twist. They're competing,
Gorgeous.
And then Megan and Eric also debuted this weekend. They have a free skate that's very similar in style to what the French ice dancers did last season. They seem to be trying to find their style. What did you make of them? Because this is, their third year together now, so we're starting to see a little bit more of who they are.
Right. I do feel like they're getting into a rhythm. I feel like they're getting into a rhythm with each other. And I think they're also finding their style, just like you said. I think, and I also don't have a problem at all with athletes sort of emulating other athletes. I feel like it's really positive when someone has had success with a certain style, and then other athletes, Rohit's here, and then other athletes, we're being video bombed by Rohit. And then other athletes find their style in a similar manner.
Yes.
So, that's part of what makes this skating community a community, right? Is that we're able to emulate other people's style and really build off of other people's success. So I love that concept.
Well, they have really huge throws, but they're not always landed on one foot. So as a coach, this is now their third year. We've seen this again. Would you be concerned with this? Like, maybe we need to change something in the technique?
Interesting. I don't know that it would concern me so much as I would just say, let's just find what's going to get you the most points, right? This is a game of Miss Pac-Man. This entire sport is a game of Miss Pac-Man. You clear the board with the most points and you're the winner. So if you're going to get pluses on something that maybe doesn't have the level of difficulty, get the pluses if that makes sense in the scale of values. The beautiful thing about our sport is you can print those scale of values. It's not a mystery. Nobody wonders. You can see it. You can add it up. You can get your calculator out and do the math, and you can figure it out as a coach. So again, it's not my call to make. It's the coach's call. It's the strategy. It's what they're aiming for at the end of the season. So, hey, if it's going to work at Worlds, maybe that's why they're in the developmental phase of it now.
Interesting. We saw Luba and Dylan perform, and they're in a very heated battle in Canada because they have the number one pair, and then everyone else is switching by the day. Who is going to be second? Who is going to be third? Who is going to be fourth?
Right.
And they think their issue is jumps, but then you look at their twists, you look at their lifts, and they're very incredible. What do you think about them?
Well, I think in general, Canadian pairs is in a really good place. I think the switching of the concept of the second to third, third to fourth, continuously switching is a great thing. I think that that's probably why their pairs are excelling. I think that they feel like they're being chased, and that's a good thing, right? A lot of athletes thrive on feeling like they're, being hunted. So I like that concept for the Canadian pairs. I think it's great. I think that hosting this show with you today, Dave, really made me pay a little bit more attention to pairs. So thank you for that. Okay. And I am impressed. Yeah. I'm impressed with where Canadian pairs is. And I think that it's anybody's game, which is how we want it. That's what makes it a sport, right?
Yeah.
We want it that way. We don't want to say, oh, they're a shoo-in, because then it's not so much of a sport. So this is exciting. It's exciting for Canadian pairs right now.
Yeah, it's exciting. I just was in Montreal. Kirsten Moore-Towers is getting over a concussion. Before that, they were looking really strong. Julianne and Charlie didn't skate well this summer. Then they were skated really well. So it's really shifting. I know he's had some back problems. They're coming back from pacing for the season. So it's going to be definitely interesting to see. But there's a really hot ice dance battle in the U.S. where everyone is finally shifting. And you know a little bit about this because someone lives in your house who choreographed.
Do you need them to come back through and do some of those moves?
Yeah, sure. So I'm sure you knew a little bit about this program when it was in development for the short dance of Chalk and Bates. They had a really traditional look. And then they had a Roheen exhibition to Beyonce that I think set the internet ablaze last year.
Yeah.
And now they've kind of incorporated this into their competitive program. So what did you make of this?
Well, I have to say that I was part of the late night roundtable, what music should we use conversation. And that's part of what Roheen and I do, right? Mm-hmm. But really, Roheen is a genius when it comes to finding an athlete or a team style. I think that actually Igor has been really surprised by Roheen's range. I think he looked at him as an athlete that could only do singles or only do a certain style. And Roheen has spent some time out there working with Maddie and Evan, and Igor very quickly said, no, I need you to work with a lot of my teams. Yeah. So he's embraced Roheen's talent the way that I have. And I just think that what Roheen does really, really well is he can just zone in on exactly what is going to look good on that athlete or those athletes. And that's really a gift that he's got in addition to all of his other gifts. But that's one of the things that he does really well. He does not apply the same moves to everybody. He really looks at, body composition, style, athleticism, musicality, looks at all of those factors, probably from a less scientific standpoint than what I just described, but he does it sort of intuitively and comes up with brilliant stuff. So I love the short dance that he's done for Maddie and Evan. I think it's been well received so far, so it's exciting.
Well, they finished second to Capolini and Lenote, and there's a lot of criticism about this team, and not in their quality as much as the fact that their themes are very similar. They're very happy, they're very lighthearted. From year to year. What is your opinion on that? If someone wants to stay in their theme, the rules don't have any, there's no rule that says you can't do what you did last year to this year.
If it works, why, so many, I think there's a fear of obviously getting too outside of someone's comfort zone, especially the year before the Olympic season. So do you really want to try to reinvent your athlete the year before the Olympic season? Or are you trying to refine what has been successful in the past? And are you just trying to build on that? I have absolutely no criticism about an athlete or a team staying in their genre. I think the time to develop range is between 11 and 15, right? So if you can develop musical range, if you can develop style in those formative years, awesome. And that's what I try to do with my athletes as much as possible. But if you don't have that range and your focus is on other things, focus on the things that are going to help you get on the podium. Who cares what last season? It's not like they play, last year's season before you skate this year's season. Forget about it. Shut the door, move on, next chapter. If it worked, it worked. Great.
It's just fun. I think ice dance is going to be very competitive this year with, Tessa and Scott coming back, the French, Weaver and Poget moving to Nikolai. There's a lot going on in ice dance at the top. Right. This team is consistent, but everyone is trying to do something different. You don't know how it's all going to kind of even out,
And to me, Dave, the mystery of ice dance is, what do they like? What do they really like? I think it comes down to that. And how do you know unless you've got years of experience? I've been lucky enough to room with some of the ice dance coaches, and I marvel at how they think, because it's so different.
Well, they're strategists. They are.
It's strategy, and it's really trying to get inside the heads of the officials. What do you want to see? So it's much more, I feel, on the level of pleasing the officials and trying to make the officials excited about the concept than it is come out and do all the tricks. Now, obviously, they have to do the tricks, but it's how do we build excitement about this genre or this theme across the board, right? Get our country on board so that they'll get the other countries on board so that we can potentially get on the podium. So I'm just impressed with how they have to be willing to please at all times, where some of the freestyle coaches have said, you know what, whatever the officials say, they're going to land their job. I mean, it's just a very different sentiment, I think.
Yeah, well, the ice dance coaches are all very interesting people too. So you have, they, and they're all tough. So in their own way. So it's very interesting to kind of see that strategy. I think you look at Piper Gillis and Paul Poirier. You know, they're not a traditional looking team. She doesn't have the long ballerina legs, so they always do something different. But then that's exciting. So these three teams, to me, I could have really made an argument that they could have finished in any order when I watched them.
I completely agree with that. I think you're spot on. I think that, again, it comes down to what did they like? What was just visually appealing at that moment, at that competition? And I think we might see some swapping of placements through the season with those three teams as well.
Which I think is good. I think because usually there isn't as much movement, but I expect things are going to change from week to week. I mean...
Agree.
And now we have Nikolai back in the mix. Like, that is a whole X factor of elements. Like, yes. So
who truly brings his own unique style, everything that he touches. So let's see what he's got up his sleeve now, right?
He's like 10 miles away from me. You know, it's very fascinating. I was in that rink at 8 o'clock in the morning hearing music cuts that you would just not expect. So it was, but things that I do like.
I was just going to say, he's truly an artist. And I think we can just, give credit to him for all of that innovation he's brought to our sport.
Yeah. Well, speaking of things that I like, I'm very into following the Japanese junior ladies right now. On the Junior Grand Prix, it's been really interesting to watch them compete from week to week. We saw a junior lady land 8 triples this week, which had not been done before under the IJS with all positive GOE. What did you think of Rika Kihira, and what did you think of Marin Honda? They're coached both by Mia Hamada and Yamada Tamura. What did you think of them and their rivalry, or what?
I think, like you said, Japanese depth. Yeah. I mean, that has got to be part of why they're succeeding, because their heels are being nipped at, so fast and so furious. Yeah. I think it's really survival. I think it's survival, and I think that there are some talented girls coming up, but I also feel like they know that there are even more talented girls on their heels. So Japanese girls are going to be forces to contend with in the next 6 years, for sure. I would expect a Japanese girl to be on the Olympic podium, at 2018 or 2022.
I could expect Marin Honda to win the Olympics when I look at her. When I feel like she has that X factor, that in 18 months from now, where she could be athletically, she could be 1 or 2 in the world when you're looking at that.
Yeah, I think that is a possibility. I feel like athletically she's got it. I feel like consistency is, impeccable. It's pretty amazing. She's got good technique, and she's a very well-rounded skater who's got kind of everything that you're looking for in your champion. So that will be an exciting ladies event.
Yeah. I want to ask you, she is someone who is this very strong long program skater. She has had issues with the short program in both of her events this year. What does that say to you? Is that a nerves thing? What do you look at?
I feel like it's anxiety. I absolutely feel like it's anxiety. I feel like it's just a matter of experience. She's young, and I think experience is key in a short program. Every athlete goes through the short program jitters, right? This has to be perfect because it's got to get me in a good place for my long. And then some of that anxiety just kind of melts away when they do the long program. So it does look to me like, she's not having technical issues. She's having just get it together mind kind of issues when she starts those short programs. So I feel like that'll be just a matter of training, and she'll get it down. Training, confidence, consistency, and just a sense of like, relax and do your short program.
Well, she does look like she's someone who trains, and everyone is very consistent. These Japanese ladies, because they have to be, and they train with Satoko Miyahara, who's very consistent. But Marin Honda has missed the double axel, double toe, double loop at the end. She singles the axel both competitions in a row. Does that say anything to you? It's right at the end. Would you change it? Would you do anything there?
No. Okay. No, I think it stays in, and until a little later in the season. I feel like it's probably a train full out until you run out of gas when you're training at home. That may be their strategy, is that she's training full out and she's missing those 3 elements at home also. So, there are 2 ways of looking at a program. You can look at it as, put in 3/4 of your energy to everything that you do so that you can maintain to the end, but then maybe don't achieve your full potential through the entire program, or achieve your full potential, more than halfway into the program, and then know that as the season continues, you'll be able to train those last 3 elements to the place where they can be the most consistent. So I wouldn't worry about that at all. I think that's probably by design, and I think they're not worried about it. Otherwise, they would have changed it as well.
Yeah. I want to ask you about Rika Kihira landing the triple axel, because now we've had a couple of ladies land the triple axel in the last couple of years. When you're developing a girl, do you now, when she's 10 or 11, the thought process used to be go through triple Lutz, and the triple. Are you now having that conversation about the axel technique so that it can last longer, so you can build upon it?
Yeah, I think that discussion comes up in so many different forums, right? It can come up at the Professional Skaters Association conference. It can come up at sports science, symposiums with U.S. figure skating and USOC personnel. I really feel like we are, in the U.S., we are walking a fine line between keeping our athletes healthy and successful at the young levels and building our champions for the future. So it's a great discussion to open up. Do we want a lot of 13 and 14-year-olds that are going to have great triple axels and maybe kind of fizzle out or burn out or get injured by the time they're 19 or 20? Or do we want to sort of protect them from that potential injury and damage to their bodies at the young age and have more sustainable, more mature athletes like an Ashley Wagner, who potentially could be seeing her second Olympics this upcoming season? So I think that's a great discussion, and it may be on a case-by-case basis, and it may be on a the philosophy of the country. So I would love to go into greater detail of that at another point with you.
Yeah, no, it's interesting because we, following the sport, we had an entire generation of ladies have hip problems and be erased. And these other countries, they have so much depth that if someone has a triple axel and loses it, they have someone else with a triple axel who's going to be in there. But maybe not everyone has that,
Right.
So
and I wonder too, I don't want to speculate, but I feel like culturally in the U.S., we are brought an individual athlete by a family, and we are told or asked to please make the most of my child, right? Versus in some of the other countries, the way their programs work, you start out with 40 kids and the strong survive. And so everybody sort of says, it's fair game. Here's your coaching, here's your group lesson. If you can make it to the top, you make it to the top, and everybody else just goes to school or learns a trade. So I don't know that we're on a level playing field with countries that have such a large base of families that say, here's my child, do what you can with them, and it's okay if they don't survive, versus our country where everybody's got to survive in their own way. Otherwise.
And everybody has a lawyer to come find you if they don't.
That's right. Exactly. There's always, and don't forget, we're a very excuse-centered culture.
Yes.
Don't forget, I had a skater that couldn't do a program because of a hangnail the other day.
Ooh. What do you say to that?
Go home.
Yeah.
Just go home and come back with a nice little Band-Aid.
Yes.
See you another day. It's very interesting. And I'm not complaining, but I think that we've got to look at our helicopter culture. We've got to look at some of the ways that athletes are just being trained. There are some great families that are willing to find great coaches and willing to say the coach's role is the coach's role, the athlete's role is the athlete's role, and sort of let's all do what we have to do. And then there are other families that don't quite get that concept. So it's navigating, finding the right ones to build.
I want to talk to you a little bit about the Russian ladies, because we see Alina Zagaitova, who's coached by Eteri Tupuritsa, who coaches Medvedeva, who coaches a ton of other athletes in Russia. Interesting thing here is that she backloads her entire programs, and we see this more and more. Do you think it's a problem now? Like, have we gotten too mathematical that the programs aren't well balanced? Because now you can snooze.
I'm tired of seeing jump, step, step, jump, step, 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 jump, just to get it in the second half. I really am. I feel like it really takes away from any storyline, takes away from any continuity. You can't really build when it's just march, 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 jump again, march, 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 jump again. Oh, yes, we're in the halfway mark. And so let's do a little bit more of that same thing. I really like, and a well-balanced program is well-balanced because it's balanced, right? So if you put a a big kid on one end of the teeter-totter and a little kid on the other end, they don't have much fun. So I feel like that's the way the program looks.
Yeah.
It's one sitting in the air and one sitting on the ground, and it's not too much fun at the playground. So I don't love it. I don't love it.
Yeah, me neither. I want to ask you, arms over the head. What is your opinion on arms over the head? 2 arms over the head. How much harder is it? What points is this really worth?
Yeah. Again, I think it's overused. Mm-hmm. I think it looks like it's overplay. So when you see arms over the head and everything they do, the question is, can they do it without their arms over their head? Right? At that point, it becomes, maybe that's not the difficult variation. Maybe for them, the difficult variation would be traditional arms. I don't know. But I don't think that it necessarily fits with every point in the music. I don't think it fits with every theme of programs. And you'll see with my athletes, we don't use that air position very often. It's okay for some people. It works for some people. If it is the factor that gives you the +3, great, use it. But I don't see it necessarily being the reason that athletes have +3s. There are so many other features to build a positive GOE that are being underused. So if the arms go over the head and the athlete scratches to a halt on the landing because they're not in a stable position, it's not worth doing.
Mm-hmm. Well, how about skating too close to the boards and jumping too close to the boards? Does that drive you nuts as a coach? Because
right, it's like the incredible shrinking rink. I don't understand why they hit the wall. They're training in facilities that are much bigger. But again, when you get to an event and you have a day or two to map out your programs, those are things that need to be done right then and there. If you get to the event and you're still learning your jumps, then you haven't prepared properly. You should be able to get to the event and use the 20 minutes or 40 minutes allocated to lay out the patterns, to make sure that you are, using the width of the rink instead of the length of the rink if the length isn't what you're used to. So I feel like there's really no excuse for that. That, to me, that's just a little bit, it just looks underprepared. Mm-hmm.
I did think that, Yoon-Soo Lin, very talented, sparkling personality. But when you see the short and the free program, when the Let's Toe combo is into the boards, what is going on here? This is too talented for that mistake to kind of happen at that point.
Right. They need an orange cone or a coach to stand there, just make sure that she jumps before that. But it doesn't make any sense. I mean, she literally hit the wall. Mm-hmm. So you've got to be pretty clueless about your space if you're going to actually slam into the wall. Mm-hmm. So I'm not sure. I mean, she's a cute kid. She's a great skater, but for heaven's sakes, teach her to skate on a studio-size rink or something so that when she gets the real deal, she can expand her wings. But I think that's maturity though too. Yeah. She'll grow up and figure out that hitting the wall isn't too cool.
Well, as we wrap things up, I wanted to ask you, how serious is the Junior Grand Prix really becoming? Because Alexei Krasnozhan seemed to be happier about making the final than he even did about winning the event here. He had one of the funniest reactions, I think, that I've seen. Yeah. Really funny kid. Yeah.
He's a dramatic guy. I mean, if you've seen him, he loves that. That's his thing. So some of that excitement is just his personality, and that's who he is. He's going to make a great showman someday. Did you
see him talking to himself through the program, and did it crack you up?
I've seen him do that before. Yeah.
Okay.
I was thinking he was singing, but he didn't have vocals at that point, so that couldn't have been it.
No, but definitely. Now, was the quad loop around for you? Because the judges said that it was. The commentators said that it wasn't. It's been this element that we're getting closer and closer and closer to all the time.
Yeah, I felt like definitely reviewable. And, if they're going to reward him for it because they feel that it fell within that, clean, then I think it's okay. I think it's okay at this point. The next panel of technical specialists will or will not agree, or he will do it the same quality or he won't. So I'm never too concerned about one event. If you get it rewarded, great, but that doesn't mean it's always going to be rewarded. And likewise, if you don't, that doesn't mean you're always not going to. So wonderful. Keep plugging away at it. It's awesome to have a quad loop in a junior event. And it's awesome to see a junior get that excited about the finals. So so we're happy to have American men in the final.
Well, what was your moment? What was your moment of the week so far this week? Of all the skating that you watched, what was your program?
let me think about that. You know, I have to tell you that I really liked Eliona and Bruno's short program.
Okay.
I thought that was great. I thought that, kind of like we were talking before, getting into a groove, felt like it was fun. I felt like it was upbeat. I felt like they were showing athleticism, and it was a good program for me. So with regard to pairs, I was kind of excited to see that, happen for them. And then Grant, I got to say, I just love that Grant left Lombardia without as much success as he hoped for, and then went to Oberstdorf and turned it around. So that was really exciting for me this week too.
Yeah. Well, I have to say the Japanese junior ladies were kind of my moment of the week so far, but Alexei Krasnozhan cracked me up the most when I was watching that. I think I caught him like 4 times talking to himself in that program, trying to make out what he said. So we want to know what your moment of the week was. I want to remind everyone to read Skating on Air. We're having a book club coming up, Kelly Lawrence, and also hop over to Golden Skate to keep the conversation going. So thank you so much, Kori Ade. And
thank you for having me.
Yes, we want to remind everyone to hold an edge. And look sexy, Kori. Bye, guys.
Bye. Thanks.